love it.
The start of greatness always happens when we stumble across something funny.
It's accidental, man. It's just like penicillin. The guy was like, this orange
Yeah.
is growing some weird thing on here. And there you go. It saves the world. So, well, it's great to meet you. And I'd love to begin our conversation with, 4 years ago, we were trying to find out how long this pandemic was going to last. Are we getting out of it? What's going on? How did you ultimately survive that time period? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Is that the question you're going to ask me later, or you're asking me right
Oh,
now?
I'm asking now. I come from jazz radio. So when we hit that hi hat, we just all like jump in the pool.
Oh, we're on. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. For me, COVID actually was during part of my reboot of my life. In 2019, my wife and I had really struggled to figure out how we could change our lives to enjoy our lives again. We got to a place of debt. We had $90,000 in debt through credit cards and money out of the government. And it was really haunting us. And so at the beginning of 2019, at the beginning of every year, we would go away for a couple of days and plan the year out because she's my business partner and my best friend. And we decided that year, hey, if we can't get out of debt and fix this problem, we just need to restart. We just need to sell our house and start over. We didn't want to do that. We had a really nice house, a big house with a movie theater upstairs and giant furniture and all the things that you really want. And so we're like, okay, well, let's just ask the Lord to give us a big bag of money this year and see if he'll pull this off. And surprise, surprise, he didn't do that. What he did do is give me vertigo for 16 days in September of 2019. And I realized I'm rolling my dice. I could be out in the street. If I have vertigo the rest of my life and I owe $90,000. So come the end of September, we put the house on the market, finally sold it in end of March 2020 when COVID was shutting down the world. And then in April, we paid everything off and we started over. And it was a really cool journey of accountability, of just stopping to blame God, the world, people, my coworkers, my clients, everybody I could blame, make excuses for why life wasn't great or why we didn't have this or that, or say, well, I can't sell my house and start over. That's ridiculous. That's a little extreme, don't you think? Settle down. And then the other side of that was we just kept waiting and hoping that year after year, maybe next year will be better. Maybe next year we'll have things turn around. And so we owned it. We just finally said, look, nobody cares about whether you're broke or fat or your marriage is not good or if you're not happy. Nobody cares unless you care enough to do something about it. And so Kathy and I cared enough to do something about it. So we sold our house, we started over. And when COVID was shutting down the world, we had such crazy peace. Although we were kind of freaked out, like, well, do we go anywhere? Do we, how do I get gas in the car if I can't breathe and I can't touch anything? And just all these weird things. But I think it was a very grounding time for us in our faith and our marriage and our health and our money and everything. There's always one thing in your life that's most screwed up. And if you take that one thing by the throat and you just take care of it, everything else seems to be like it's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
So once we got out of debt and we were breathing a sigh of relief, we looked at our marriage and said, "Guy, we fought for the last 2 years. Why don't we go to marriage counseling?" And then, I'm still fat. I should lose weight. And so why don't I just stop drinking? I mean, COVID was a great time to drink. What are you going to do? There wasn't a whole lot going on. So my routine was do some stuff and then spend the balance of the evening having bourbon and chips. And that wasn't healthy. And so on and on, all these things that we just had developed that we didn't like, that we just started taking them and owning them. So to me, the time of COVID was a great time of reflection. There was a lot of self-evaluation of looking like, okay, well, the whole world's starting to act weird. Why don't we just really say, if I could choose to set up my life a certain way today, what would I like it to be? And we had lots of time to think. And we had lots of time to talk. And we came out of COVID so focused and so strong. My clients are business owners and CEOs. And we had phone calls, Zoom calls every week trying to figure out what the heck are we going to do? Do we send them home? Do we bring them back? Do they wear masks? Do they not wear masks? Do we ask them to get a shot? I mean, it's just so for me, I was super busy. And my business actually doubled in 2020 and it doubled in 21 again.
Wow.
And it was only because I took my head off of all the junk that had held me back because of my debt and all the excuses, the crippling excuses that you look at like a victim and you self-impose victimhood on you because you think, well, I can't do this or that. Well, you can. And we did all those crazy things and our life's better for it.
Great. That's a great story. And I hear a lot of silver linings from that time period. I mean, it was a real moment for everybody to kind of put the mirror up. I mean, even the planet healed. The Venice Canal got clear. All the air in Beijing, the smog in LA. It's like there was all these things that Mother Nature took care of. I remember at one point, I was driving, I'm an IT technician by day, so I was driving down a rural road and I saw a dog chasing a deer, and I've never seen that. It's like the planet quieted enough for all this frolic with animals. There was
Yeah.
just so many things, and I think that's the thing. It was a real weird time, but I think at the end of the day, we all need to have that moment to pause.
Yeah. You through hard times, you really start to sit back and go, what do I really want? You know,
Yeah,
when you're working so hard to chase something, you just kind of get in a rut. That's what you do.
yeah.
But then you get cancer, or then you get divorced, or then you go bankrupt, or there's always some kind of reset button. And I think we always get mad at that. But you know, my mom always told me that the view from the top is beautiful, but the fruit grows in the valley. And so when I've had the hardest times in my life, I've really grown. I've learned stuff. When I'm doing great and I'm making a ton of money, I don't need God. I got money. So I'm just kind of busy and doing life. And all of a sudden, when things go bad, you're like, okay, God, I'm listening.
Yeah.
And I think it's a reset for a lot of us when we step back and say, what do I really want? And that's what it was for us.
What a great quote. The view from the top and then the fruit on the bottom. That's such a great realistic thing. So let's get to the heart and soul right now in 2024 of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I help mommy and daddy. I help mommy and daddy grow their business because most leaders already know what to do, but they're not doing it. Just like you know you're supposed to floss your teeth and you know you're supposed to do your homework, but sometimes you don't. And at the end of the day, they don't need me to tell them what to do. They just need me to help them get it done. So I have monthly meetings where we all come together and we talk about our challenges and our frustrations and problems, and then we learn from each other because everyone's going through the same stuff. It might be different scenarios, but it's always the same stuff. People, time, cash, and tech. Those are always the same four that we all deal with. And through these group meetings, they learn from one another, they get encouragement, and they get accountability. Because when you're a final decision for a company, sometimes you let yourself do things you shouldn't do, or you don't do things you should do, like fire that bad employee or walk away from that bad customer, or you know you should be putting money away or taking it out of the business, but you don't, and you're not making wise choices, and nobody calls you out because they work for you. Having a peer group like that is really, really valuable. And then I support that with some executive coaching and leadership development as they have needs, because sometimes the CEOs don't know how to do that. They're really good at making a widget. They're really good at driving the business, but that kind of leadership development is just not normally their skill set. So I supplement with that.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Truck driver. I
Okay.
don't know where that came from. My dad was a tow truck driver for quite a while. We were a very poor family. I didn't know that there were really any jobs other than being a mechanic, the truck driver. There was actually a dude, the Helms Bakery truck would come around with milk and bakery items in our neighborhood and candy. And I thought, man, if I could be a Helms Bakery truck driver, that would be wicked.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I remember when I was growing up, there was a show called BJ McKay and his best friend Bear, and it was
BJ and the Bear.
yeah, BJ and the Bear, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be cool. Driving around with a monkey around the country, just having a good time. That's your best friend? Come on.
Yeah, there's nothing creepy about that.
No, no, not, well, yeah. And that's the thing about this cultural woke thing. It's like all of these things that we love that were just benign are have turned into this weird realm of like Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
It's
that's
weird.
true. That's
So
true.
weird. So, how did these seeds of becoming an entrepreneur? You talked about the way you grew up and what you knew was going on. How did the blinders come down? How did you realize that you could do anything you wanted to in this life? What were those seeds planted in you?
I think it was desperateness. I don't think I thought I could do anything I wanted to do. I think I felt I had to do something. I think that most of the time, the leaders I know what they're supposed to do, but they're just not getting it done. And it's not until something gets really ugly that all of a sudden they go, okay, I got to do this. And what I don't want for people is to only do things when their back's in a corner and they're desperate. That's a tough way to live. If you could proactively learn by watching someone else's journey and go, well, I didn't even know that could happen, and then you can avoid it because you saw it happen in their world. That's magic. But for Kathy and I, we had known we were getting into debt. It didn't start at 90. It was like 5, and then it was 20, and then it was 30. And every year when we didn't make as much money as we wanted to spend, no, we weren't going to stop spending. We just figured that we just IOU it to the world. And when we got so desperate that we were willing to do anything, then we changed. And I don't want people to only change when they're desperate. I want people to take the tools that we wrote in the book to help them see that life is better when you own it. There's freedom and accountability. If everything that happens to me makes me feel like a victim, that's a downer. That's an emotional drain. My bad boss, my ex-husband, my kids, my health, everything's bad and I'm just here sucking it up. But if I can really get to the place where I can view what do I want my life to look like? And then I go chase that. I'm going to hit some roadblocks, but I know where I'm going. And the desire to have something better than what I have now fuels me to do it. The doubt that you have is that you could even do it. That's why we surround ourselves with other people who will help us continue to dream and to press on. One of the principles of the book is that you don't do this alone. That's why we have peer groups. That's why I started these peer groups because as a CEO, you just think, oh, I can't do this. I can't change that. I can't get rid of that number one employee because I'll lose business. I can't get rid of that number one customer. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. And if they're a cancer, you absolutely have to. But too many leaders wait till it's just really, really horrible. In the meantime, other good people have left your company because they don't need to be around that person. And other clients have left because you put all your attention dealing with this bad client and your quality of service and deliverable and all these things, they get worse and worse. We have to stop making excuses and blaming things. We have to own it. And it's more fun that way.
So who's been your hero?
My hero, wow, this may sound weird, but if I had to look at a hero, someone you look up to, and that would be Jesus Christ, which may sound cheesy to people, but in comparison to the people I know, who else would I think that way about? I certainly have seen some men in my life that have modeled godliness and being a good dad. In my world, what I really care about is how I serve the Lord and live a life that honors Him, how I treat my wife, how I raise my kids, and then my work is down here somewhere.
Yeah,
And work is what gives me money to do all this stuff, but that's not as important as the whole life together. So I like the way Jesus rolled. He
yeah,
hung out with people, he cared for people, he talked about God, and he had fun and enjoyed life. And that seems like a good way to live for me.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd have to say Christ. I think he's a good hero.
So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational or fascinating, who would that be?
Wow. Used to say James Taylor. I thought it would be cool to hang with James Taylor. Um, I just think he's old. I don't know if I'd hang with him. I'd like to meet some of these people that are really influential and young.
Yeah,
I don't think like young people. My son is 22, and often he says stuff, and I just look at him like, yeah, I know you're my son, but what the heck? Where does that come from? I'd like to hang with someone who was young, who could share their journey, really articulate it well, and I could watch them look at life and make decisions. I think we've got such a gap from we're the old guys. Now, I'm the old guy now.
yeah,
And how I look at the world, like I remember my dad and the other people in my world, they were old people. They were like old cranky people who remembered the war and all this kind of stuff. And I don't want to be that guy, but I think I kind of slid up to a little bit of that. I want to hang with enough young people to understand the world that's going to be coming up because we certainly didn't do them a great favor by the way we ran the world so far. And I don't know that they're excited about running it themselves, but I think I'd like to hang with some of the younger people. I don't know who those people are. I get to hang with my son all the time, so that's always fun to watch his journey. But I'd like a grounding point to see if is he the only guy saying this stuff?
yeah. Right. You know who is fascinating is the guy Mr. Beast. Do you know who he is?
No.
He's like the top YouTube guy. He has the most followers ever. He has a whole line of like chocolates that are in Walmart. He has burger chains. He goes out and he goes to these places and helps people that don't have eyesight and like he gave like thousands of people operations to do it. He takes all the money he
Wow.
makes off his videos and reinvests it. So he's building all of these villages and homes for people and he has these contests. So these videos generate all this revenue and he puts it all back in. But he's just this humble guy. He was on Joe Rogan.
Wow.
I heard it about 6 months ago. And I'm just like, he's very young and he was athletic. He's from Kansas somewhere. He had a lot of athletic talent, but he really invested himself into being a YouTuber. But that would be a cool cat for you to look into
Okay.
because he just brims with this like new entrepreneurial spirit. I think that's the great thing about your son's age is that these kids now are thinking, I can do this on my own. I don't need to go after the pie in the sky that my parents did. I don't need to be tethered to this 401k. I can go out and do what I want to do. And I think there's more of that. I think that's what you're talking about with the youth thing.
As long as they're not fearful. I think
Right.
there's a higher level of fear in the younger generation. And so, yes, they're not tethered by worrying about financial risk like most entrepreneurs have been, mostly because they're living on their parents' money
Yeah.
right now. It's hey, everything's fine. But I think there's an awful lot of fear of just things are bad and they're going to get worse. And I think to be a true entrepreneur, you have to be willing to take a lot of risk. And if you're quick to have fear, I think you're gonna either short sell the effort or quit early, or maybe not take the risk the way you wanted it to be. Like you'll risk it this way, but you won't risk it that way. In COVID, when things were really tight, we doubled down our efforts to reach out to people because who knew what to do during COVID?
Yeah.
It was such a scary time. So instead of me going, well, no one's going to be doing business in 2020. Hey, everyone who had a business still had to do business. Some of them were required or were allowed to be essential and run, but they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So we just took that as a time. Hey, this is a time to reach out to people. This is a time. So we doubled our efforts and we partnered with people and we spent a lot of money on marketing in 2020 because we thought people are going to be looking for solutions. So you have to take the opportunity and push past the risk if you're really going to make it work.
So it's very clear with your life, not only personally, but professionally, where you've evolved. You've learned from what you've done and you've evolved to this point right now. What is that gumption for you every day to get up out of bed, to do this work, to work as hard as you can, to be who you are?
Yeah, I I love what I do. I love my clients. I love changing people's lives. Used to be all about money and my title, and as I grown up and had those things, it just didn't give me as much joy as watching someone's life get better. I feel like God has teed me up to have an influence on the world for these days. I'm 61 and I feel like I'm just kind of hitting my sweet spot. And I feel like I got a good 20 years before I start wetting my pants in meetings and not remembering people's names and stuff. So I really want to crank it down for the next 20 years and see, can I get the book out and change a lot of lives? Can I do more workshops to help people get over their fears and own the life they really want? It's a vision of giving God a good return for the life He's given me. I mean, I live in Texas. It's the richest country in America. I have a beautiful wife who loves me. I have healthy children. Everything is good. This is the kind of mindset that I deserve. God deserves to get a good return for what He's given me, and that fuels my efforts to not just coast, but to really amp up for the next 20 years and see what can I do with the days ahead.
And the young minds out there that you want to be around need to be around the mind that you have, the ideas that you have, because you're encouraging, and that is great. Because I think sometimes people look at 50 and 60 and they're like, "Oh man, that's the time where the sun's setting and things get weird." But it all depends on how you do it, because it's just like you said. I mean, you can cut things out of your diet, you can do things differently, you can cut back on the booze, you can exercise. There's all of these things that you can do to give your body vitality, which by proxy will give your mind a stronger
Yes. Yeah.
vitality as well.
I don't believe there's any cause for retirement. If you've lived a miserable career and you can't wait to get out to go golf, then I guess that's maybe why you'd be incentivized to want to go retire. But everybody I know who retires dies.
Yeah.
And I'm not ready to die. I mean, I know everyone's going to die. That's not a big mystery. But I feel like there's no reason to retire. If you are not doing what you love, quit your job. Don't retire. Quit your job. Go do something you love. Maybe you make a fraction of it, but heck, until you're 68 and 8 months, any money you make above a certain minimum amount, they're going to take back money anyway. So what's the point? You might as well just keep working.
Yeah.
And as long as you can, there's a lot of need in the world. And if you're that rich and you're that successful that you don't have to work, great. Go volunteer for a charity. Go help build schools in another country. Go serve with the kids, read books to kids in school. Just don't be selfish. Don't just I deserve this. You don't deserve anything.
Yeah.
You got what you have. You have food, you're living and you're breathing. And I think there's just more to do than just be about us.
Yep. I totally agree. Of all of these things that you've done with your life and evolved to at this point, what are you the proudest of?
Oh, proud. I struggle with pride, so I would my
Yeah,
initial answer is
it's an
to
ugly one.
yeah.
I don't mean it in that way, but I mean just what brings you that joy.
You know, I got recognized for being an example in the DFW community through the technology community that I serve. We started something called the DFW Technology Prayer Breakfast. It's an annual event at the Irving Convention Center, and we started 11 years ago. And I got an award for being an example of a guy who models godly behavior in the business world and mentors and cares for people. And it was just, I still got it. It's right. It's the glass one on the shelf right there.
Oh
It's
yeah,
the only
right on.
trophy I have. And that makes me proud. I want to be recognized for the good things in life. I want people to smile when they think of me. I love the other thing I'll say is I love when my clients tell me that they love me. I know it sounds lame, but I started coaching a guy recently, and after our second session, as he's leaving down the hall, I said, "Hey man, just keep up on your notes. You're gonna do fine." He turns around, "Thanks, man. I love you." And then just walks off. And I didn't say I love him ever during our meetings, but for him to say I love you, I was like crying in my office. Because I mean, that's what matters. Some random human who you just met a month ago is now going to tell you they love you.
Yeah,
I just think that's cool. I think that's impact, and that makes me feel proud.
absolutely. So let me ask you this. We've been kind of tethered to this idea of youth, which is great. But if you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you impart? And would that version of you listen?
No, it
Right,
would
there you
not
go.
listen. That's for sure. I know that answer. Um, I think I didn't believe in myself. I had a really angry father who beat us and my mom, and I had a lot of fear and doubts in my life. I was never good at anything. Like I'd play sports and I was the guy, and it shows how much I know about sports in the field where it never gets hit. Is that right field? I don't
Yeah.
really know. But they'd put me out there and I'd be talking to people and playing around and stuff. And thank God they never hit it to me because I wouldn't have caught it anyway. And, so uh, I never really saw myself as having any potential. Even when I got voted in to be a senior role in my senior year at high school, I still just couldn't believe that I deserved it. So I had a lot of insecurities and doubts. And so I think if I could just say to my 18-year-old self, if you can't believe in yourself, at least believe in the God who created you, because he doesn't make mistakes and he has a plan for your life. And I think I had a lot of head trash that held me back. I still survived. I still made good choices. I went off on my own and got a job and got my own place, got married, took care of all that. I was a responsible person, but I was filled with a lot of doubt that I think made me do a lot of things that I wasn't proud of or be a way that I didn't really want to be. I think I had a lot of self-doubt, and I would hope to inspire myself to push past that.
So at the end of the day, Robert, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Man, these are good questions, dude.
Thank you.
I think I'm a work in progress. I think I've learned a lot, but I'll never be done learning. Um, every year, I feel like I get a little better at some of the nuts and bolts of things, but the world keeps changing constantly. And by the time you figure out how to not suck at something, there's something else that you could suck at. And so I think just uh, being content to little baby step my journey and to always be humble. Um, I'm very thankful for the life I live and the wife I have that cares about me and supports me. But I feel like I'm just always still learning. I think I'll always be that way. And I think that makes you hungry. When you get content and you think you got it all, that's when you stop learning and you make mistakes. So I think it's just continuing to know I'm a work in progress.
So Nobody Cares Until You Do is your book. If anyone wants to get that, they want to hire you, reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, they can go to nobodycaresbook.com and that will tell them all about the book and become a part of the community of those who want to be accountable in the world. For my main business, it's REF Dallas, like refdallas.com. That's where I talk about the CEO peer groups and my coaching and all that. For your podcast, I created a special domain where if anybody will go in there and send me a note with the keyword for the meeting, then I'll mail them a copy of my book, Nobody Cares. So they can go to Nobody Cares Pod, Nobody Cares Pod.com. And if they just put in there the code word famous, then I'll mail them a copy of my book. Just happy to do that.
Excellent. Robert, this is wonderful. I'm always comforted by people like you that exist in the world that are just pushing and doing good work. So thank you. It's a wonderful story, man.
Oh, thank you. It's a fun interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.